it took at least 5 other things that I want to talk about very quickly here. One of them was that, there had to be global demand for this oil. In other words, someone had to need the oil, and that had not always been the case. The global economy has exploded in the last few years. Even with it kind of slowing down a little bit in the last year or so, it's going to grow about 3.5 or 4%, of which 75% plus of that growth is going to come in the emerging economies of the world. Not in the United States, not in Europe, not in Japan, but in the emerging part of the world. Now, why that's important is that's the area of the world that's starting to manufacture, that historically has been agrarian or based on minerals. They're starting to make things now. When you make things, you use more energy. They're going to need a huge amount of energy. In the next quarter century, this country or this world is going to need all the energy we use now, Xerox it and put another set up there. We're going to need twice what we need now in the next 25 years. We'll get some of it from renewables. We'll get some of it from all kinds of different places, but we have to get it from hydrocarbons. That's the only thing we have. We have to get it a little cleaner than we get it now, both getting it out of the ground and burning it. We have to do some other things to make it better, but we absolutely have no other place to get the energy to fuel the world other than hydrocarbons. And every molecule that we're going to take out of here in this situation, make no mistake about it, every molecule we take out of here is going to be exported, okay? Now, that was one thing that had to happen. Another thing that had to happen, exporting itself. We had to figure out different ways to export beyond what we've done before. And we're seeing that happen now. One of them I mentioned was we can now compress and liquefy natural gas. And so it's no longer just a domestic market. We can ship natural gas all over the world to places that don't have it. And believe me, they'll pay very dearly for it if they don't have it. The other one, of course, is in 2015, we finally got rid of the ban on crude oil exports. So we can now ship crude directly out of the country. So all of these things are happening. And then the other one was discoveries. Because once we figured out you could get it out of the rocks, the next thing we found out is we have a whole lot of rocks here. Literally, we found layer after layer after layer below where we got oil before and found these huge reserves that are in the area. And we found new places where we didn't even know there was oil before because none of it ever had seeped out of the rocks, but it was down in those rocks. And we were able to find those because of new technologies and new techniques and new possibilities in drilling. In the century, next year will be a century that we've been drilling oil in the Permian Basin. If you take the oil and the gas and you convert it all to barrels, we've taken out something like 40 billion barrels of oil. The reserves we feel pretty confident about right now that are recoverable are about 3 times that. We don't measure our availability of oil today in years or decades like we had to do 10 years ago. We measured in centuries. It's an entirely different world than anything we've ever seen before. Okay, so those discoveries are a big part of it. The next thing that's happening is the infrastructure to make this happen. I mentioned those pipelines that were sent the other way back 10 years ago. They've reversed them now, and they're building billions of dollars and thousands of miles worth of new ones right now. They're building storage capacity on the Gulf Coast. They're building LNG capacity. They're widening and deepening the ports to get them ready to use the bigger vessels we can now get through the Panama Canal, and even on the outer islands, the huge vessels that come out of the Suez Canal that can handle 4 times as much oil in one shipment as we're able to do right now. All of these things are happening at once. So it's a huge thing that has a global significance, and it all starts and ends right here. And the final one that's happened, and frankly I think it's one of the most important ones, is we're getting the cost down. If you go back, let's go back, I keep going back to 2008. Let's go back to 2008 one more time. If you remember, the price of oil went way up in 2008, $125, $30 a barrel, got way up there, okay? And then it started falling very rapidly. But a funny thing happened. As the price started falling, the rig count kept going up. That's kind of weird. Until we hit 70, and then the rig count plummeted. You come over then to 2014, 2015, same thing, we get up to $100 a barrel or so. Price starts falling very dramatically. Rig count keeps going up until we get to 70, and then it plummets again. So what that tells me is that in 2008, in 2015, which was just barely 3.5 years ago, the break-even price for oil was about $70 on average. I mean, it varies by a lot of different factors that come into play. But on average, about $70 a barrel was the incremental cost of getting a barrel out and getting it to market where it made sense to do it. Today, that number's about 50. And we know that because we've seen it, once the price went down, as soon as it hit 50, it started accelerating again. 4 years ago, $70 was the breaking point. That was the brakes. Today, 50 is the accelerator. That is a dramatic difference in cost. And it's come about because of a number of things, using water more efficiently. It's come about because of smart drill bits with brains in them, artificial intelligence, digitization, all sorts of things we're doing now to bring technology to the oil industry. And all of that is very, very important. Well, what does it mean? That's the next question. Well, I think it means we'll have less volatility in the future than we've had in the past. Not saying you won't drill more wells at 80 than you will at 50, so sure you will. But it's not going to be a huge number. You're going to continue to drill at 50. And the interesting thing is that cost pattern, best we can tell, is still going down. It hasn't plateaued at the bottom yet. So what does that mean? It means it's less volatile. It means larger companies are making very, very large lease agreements right now. They're leasing large, huge amounts of land. And they're developing drilling plans for decades that basically say, we want to drill about this many wells every year. And yeah, we may go up a little bit if the price is high. We go down a little bit if the price is low. But we're going to keep drilling. Okay? That has some profound implications for our area. It means instead of a workforce that lives in man camps and comes in and out every couple of weeks, which is very inefficient, lives in hotels, very inefficient, very expensive, is not optimal for the companies. Instead of that, we'll have a workforce that it makes sense for them to move here. And that means we need a workforce, and we need to train that workforce. And that includes not just the people out in the field, but the people who do the complex computer stuff that gets more and more complex every year in the oil and gas industry. It means the engineers, the geologists, all the technicians, everyone in the industry, that they're going to be here. We need to welcome them. We need to train them. That's going to bring a permanent population increase, which means housing, as the mayor was talking about. It means schools. It means healthcare facilities. It means local infrastructure. And it means amenities, like the great place we're in right now. It means quality of life, sporting events, cultural events, things that make it a desirable place to live. All of those things need to happen in order for us to fully capitalize on what's about to happen out here.